So, do you see it okay?
Yes.
Just a minute. Sorry, I'm at the start now. Okay, can begin. So, hello everyone again. My name is Raimundas. I am working currently in Telesoftas as a product owner lead. I have been working in this company for more than 5 years. I started as a project manager, and during my work for 3 years, I worked as a PM and worked with various different clients in various markets, in fintech, in telecom businesses. And during this time, I shifted more to a product ownership part because that was more interesting, and I felt that I can deliver much more value to our customers by helping them to realize how to develop a product, how to prepare the backlog, roadmaps, and define the tasks which are needed immediately to work on, to also help the development team to understand the scope and work on the things that needed delivery right here and now. So product ownership is in a large part understanding the scope of the product is needed and helping to deliver that value as intended and not get lost in the myriads of wishes and various feature requests. Before working in Telesoftas, I worked in a small startup, which is now not very small, but I worked there for 9 years. I worked 7 years as customer support for B2B business, and then spent 2 years as internal support. It was a fun experience, and that company is now a rather large Estonian corporate. I don't think you will know it because it's mostly B2B and they don't do a lot of advertising, but they're a successful business. And I'm really happy that they had a chance to work in a successful startup. A little bit about me. I'm generally a curious person, and I know a little about a lot of things. And I feel that it also really helps in my daily work because product ownership is also a part of it is understanding the market of the product and all around surrounding context of it. So I feel that having a lot of general knowledge is really, really helpful in such position. Currently, I'm working as a product owner lead. So we have a small team of product owners, and I'm helping them to improve their skills, and we are working as a team with various customer projects. I'm also part of the Telesoftas product development department, where we also are trying to create our own products and trying to create to utilize our experience in tech development and to create something of our own. Okay, so what is product development in Agile way? Usually when you start the product, you probably start from an idea, from some sort of vision that you believe in, that you think is a great opportunity to create in this world. But of course, ideas are important, but around the idea, there's a huge context of what also needs to happen. So of course, execution, market research, and things like that, they're not in the last place, and just having an idea is usually not enough to bring the product to fruition. And usually you start from market research. And of course, Googling is a good place to start. And the important things that you need to capture here is to try and understand how unique your idea is. In this day and age, of course, there are so many digital products that most probably it's very hard to think of something very unique. So it's a high chance that you will find something already similar. And then the question, of course, is does the market need another another same product as you thought of, but maybe you have some interesting angle for your product or a very useful pivot. So it's not always given that something that exists that you don't have to copy and automatically lose faith. Also very good if you have worked in that certain industry for some time and maybe you have some very, very deep and good knowledge about this, some very specific aspects of the market. And this usually is a very good starting point for some business opportunities, which you can really, really utilize very well. So in general, although there are myriads of products, usually there are still quite a lot of opportunities. There's also a very good question of how disruptive is your idea. And there usually how I like the assessment of one of PayPal co-founders, Peter Thiel's. He describes disruptive innovation as a business that has a technology that can bring at least 10 times improvement into some already existing way of doing things. So PayPal itself is a very good example, because when PayPal was established, bank transfers usually took days. And even now, if you look at international bank transfers, they're still very slow comparatively. But when PayPal came into market, they immediately managed to do a transfer in about 10 to 15 minutes, which is really quite a significant improvement. Another such example is, of course, Skype, where again, before Skype, all calls were cost money. You had to pay by minute. But as soon as Skype entered the market, the calls between Skype accounts was basically free. So in this case, you can get an infinite improvement. Another good, well-known example is Amazon. It's now a huge behemoth, but when they started their business, they started by selling books online. And again, you can think of it this way, that before Amazon, if you wanted to buy a book, you had to go to a bookstore physically. You had to browse the book, choose it, pay it, bring it back home. So all of this process was not very efficient, and of course took quite some time. And if you compared when Amazon launched their online service, basically you could do the same process, like searching, ordering, and paying for a book in a couple of minutes instead of hours. And of course, you had a much, much larger selection of all of the books. So yes, we would all like to be at the front end of some disruptive innovation, but generally not all ideas are so unique and so good, and it's not. And it's maybe also a little bit of luck to think of something that innovative. But also, on the other hand, if you have a pretty valid idea, I would suggest that you would try to launch it and do all the necessary steps to at least validate and check how it is. The experience itself might bring you quite a lot of joy and, of course, knowledge. Together with ideas and evaluation, you probably need to establish a company, and there are pretty simple things that every company needs. It's a product or a service, an ability to sell it, and an ability to handle the money, the finances. This seems simple enough, but it also brings a very important point, that these three skill sets are quite unique, and it's very, very difficult to have all of them in one person. So it's very difficult to create a startup or to bring the product to fruition alone. But of course, there's always exceptions to such rules. And one very good, very well-known example is indie game Stardew Valley, which has been created by Eric Barron. It took him 4 years of development, but he was working totally alone on this. He did all of the art, music, storyline, dialogues, and also the development. At the same time, he was also leading a huge community around this game development, where he was sharing beta, sharing ideas, gathering feedback. So basically that community became his first customers and of course played a huge role in marketing. But when this game launched in 2016, it has sold more than 10 million copies worldwide on various platforms. So it's a huge success. So it is possible to create products alone. Another such example is another indie game called Untitled, which was created by Toby Fox. It has very similar story as Stardew Valley, where Toby created basically all of the assets, art, music, everything, and also the coding part himself. The game released in 2015 and sold more than 1 million copies. Again, huge success. But it's not only gaming industry that has such examples. So there's a quite recent app called Librex, which is meant for anonymous communities and anonymous discussions in US universities. The interesting part about this app that, again, it was created by a single person, Ryan Schiller, a Yale student. But the interesting part is that he was not a developer. He was a math student. And what happened is that he basically saw an opportunity in his student campus where he noticed that people were reluctant to talk about certain topics. And he thought that maybe an anonymous social network application would be an answer. But he did everything very properly, I would say. He created a questionnaire, asked around, gathered feedback, and then, because he saw an opportunity, just started learning iOS tutorials and created an iOS application on his own without any computer science background. I would really recommend checking a podcast with Lex Friedman with Ryan. I will share my slides at the end and you will get all the links. So there's a great story and a lot of good information of how he created the product alone and what also interesting and cool stuff he did to promote it and market it. So if you're interested in that, I really recommend it. So these examples show that, yes, you can do stuff alone, but these are really, really exceptional outliers. They are great ideas with very passionate people who have multitudes of talent. But usually, in most of the cases, you will need a team, and you will need help from outside with different skill sets. But in this case, I would really suggest to evaluate, first of all, your own strengths, like what do you bring to the table of this product? Do you understand the product vision and you can carry the product development? Maybe you're great with networking, with sales, and attracting the capital to it. Or maybe you're very good in recruiting and gathering the team around this product. So understanding your own strengths, you can also start searching what other things need to complement and how to continue your product development. So the brief overview of this first part is that ideas are, of course, important and good, but they're not everything. You really need to think about much more than just idea. Researching and understanding the market can help you a lot, and also evaluating what is the impact of your product. So that is also quite important. And of course, what competencies you have and what help do you also still need. But evaluating all of this, and if you start software product development, there is also a very huge question of how exactly to do that. And to answer that, it brings us to, of course, Agile. If we think about Agile a little bit from historic perspective, it's of course it's a methodology created to make software products. But if we think about it a bit more broadly, is that people have been making various physical products quite for a long time, and we have perfected the process of doing that quite well. And of course, what happened when we started making software products, naturally we decided that, well, we have these very good processes here, and just let's move them and apply to digital products. Of course, that didn't work out so well. It brought in quite a lot of frustration, especially for developers, and also quite a lot also for the users. How to say? enough is enough. Some of the developers said, and what they did is they gathered in 2001. There were like 17 leading minds in software development who gathered in one convention. They spent a couple of days in I think in Aspen Mountains. They did a lot of skiing, eating, having fun, conversations around the beer. And of course, from all these discussions, they decided on certain recommendations of how software development should be implemented. And it manifested into Azure Manifesto, which you can find now. It's azuremanifesto.org. The website will be totally outdated, but it's fine. It was created long ago. It's not long. It just has this couple of important principles behind software development. These are more like recommendations, but they are very, very important if you want to actually create a software product, because they will show you a philosophical way of how to deal with also the team and how to create the product, which is has much larger success rate than doing it traditionally. Together with agile approach, there are also other good things to know about software development. And the very important concept is minimal viable product. And then you think about it, that when you have your product idea, the main issue is that probably your idea is still quite new. Even if some sort of competitor exists, probably you don't want to copy it, just make exact clone of the competition. You do want to do something maybe different, at least a little bit differently. But the problem with creating new things is that those things are not tested, and you have zero proof if that is actually what the users and the market want. So the idea behind MVP, or minimum viable product, is that you should deliver value as fast as possible to your users, to get feedback and to continue this process iteratively. So of course, software development is also quite an expensive endeavor. So behind MVP idea is to actually test your business assumptions as soon as possible and as cheap as possible. So it is recommended that you clarify the essential parts, the essential features of your product, deliver them first in any way or shape it's possible. Test and try it on the actual end users, get their feedback, and here you should be very, very honest that if your hypothesis fail, then that's the reality of it, and you should gather the feedback honestly and check it if what was wrong, and reevaluate and try to do a second iteration as fast as cheap as possible until you find something that is actually working, that your users are quite happy to use, and then continue from there. Continuing on this idea is now there are myriads of tools that you can use with this approach. So again, as I said, software development is expensive. So here you have a screenshot. It looks like from the app, but this is actually not a working app. This was created with a tool called Figma. And what it does basically, if you create designs of an application, an experienced Figma user, most likely a designer or UX specialist, can create a very compelling demo flows. And that takes not very long at all. If you move fast, you can create it probably in a week, most 2, and you can create a very nice polished demo to just that can be launched on actual physical device and given for users to just tap around, click around, and they would have a very, very nice feel of how the end application works. So in a couple of weeks, you can probably implement a demo of a couple of main core features and just give your users a try. Very similar idea is you can do with web pages using tools like Wix or Squarespace. For e-commerce solutions, you can use Spotify, or actually you can just use Facebook Marketplace and just Facebook groups and try to test your business ideas if you have some sort of interesting angles there. And this is general approach that before you do any huge development planning, myriads of features, and spending of maybe tens of thousands of euros on what might be working, you should try to really research some tools and try to do this as efficiently and test the assumptions even before you're starting any development. But if you have something that is working and now you need to do already start proper software development and following from the agile principles, there's probably a thing that you heard called Scrum. And Scrum is a development already a process, a framework, how to create products efficiently. And Scrum is based on iterations, which in Scrum are called sprints. And the ideas behind Scrum are very simple, but the practicalities of it are gives quite a lot of challenges. And I would say that the difficult part is the implementation and the interactions between team members. So if we look at the Scrum, how it works, basically, if you take an iteration of, let's say, 2 weeks, so what happens is that the whole team does a sprint planning session, which they take the highest priority items from the product backlog. And highest priority items these are prioritized by a product owner, and the team decides how much they can do in these 2 weeks. And after that, they create a sprint backlog, and this sprint backlog is their scope of this 2-week work. And what happens is that the team is working. They are having a daily short meeting to sync amongst themselves, to explain what they were doing yesterday, what are they planning to work on today, and to share if they have any obstacles. And here it's very important to understand that this meeting is not meant to report to someone like a project manager or a product owner. So actually, project manager does not even exist in Scrum framework. And it's important to understand that this is part of the team just talking amongst themselves. So the huge emphasis in Scrum framework is that team empowerment and sort of acknowledging that the technical people are the best ones who know how to do the technical implementation. And after 2 weeks of such work, they create a product increment, which is demoed to a product owner, maybe to even stakeholders. Also, the team does a short review to check what was completed, what was not completed, how they managed to do, and then they should do a larger meeting, which is called retrospective, to check in general how they're working. Do they have some much more serious obstacles? To maybe they have some concerns, and to create some action items to work on in the next sprint. And then they have another planning, and the cycle continues. Scrum is simple, but also very powerful, because it acknowledges the realities of a digital world, that requirements can change quite quickly, but also at the same time, development is not a fast process. So that is why the team sort of needs a 2-week window to really work on those items, to really create something substantial, but at the same time not to lose the agility, so that if maybe the context of the product totally changed in 2 weeks time, so that maybe there's some new business requirements, maybe something very important things happened in the context of the whole market, so that the business team could do this input, and the team can reevaluate the priorities and do some actual substantial increment of the product again. So the Scrum here tries to balance that realities of business and the realities of software development, peculiarities. And here is another example, like one of the roles of a Scrum team is a product owner. And here is basically the same cycle. It's just that the Scrum itself is in this small circle with the development team, and the product owner's position is to talk with the stakeholders, and stakeholders are the people who have the best knowledge of the business environment, but they might not understand how the software development process works at all. But they do know how the market works, and they have all the needed information to create the product. So the product owner's work is to extract that knowledge in the requirement form, to try to understand and always keep the vision of the final product. Here in the picture, you can see these are examples of what kind of requirements can the stakeholders formulate. It can be large tasks, it can be small tasks, it can be tasks that have a lot of value or little value or even unknown value. And here the product owner job is to understand this scope and difficulty and the impact of what it means for the product, for the end product. And the important part is saying no to things that really have no chance of becoming part of product, even if you can say that this might be done in a half a year or something. But it's better just to say no and not to even bother logging it anywhere, because if it's really important, it will come back. And saying yes to those items which are really important. So here we have that product backlog to understand the priority, what has to be pushed to the front, which is ready for development. And then it's already more for the development team to understanding these priorities, taking those items and working on them. And after a iteration, delivering something which is probably most hopefully useful to the stakeholders and end users. And this cycle, and there's a lot of the difficult part is, of course, communication, alignment, and understanding what is good for the product. So if we look at this as a summary from a process perspective, that you should always keep agile mindset, because things are constantly changing. There's a very huge importance that you should test as many assumptions as possible before you even do actual product development. You will save money, believe me. This one is very important. And you always should do as much iteration in the product cycles so that you can quickly adapt to changes if needed, but also to have something delivered. As soon as you deliver your first MVP, your first actual MVP, and you get your first true users, someone who even hopefully pays for your product, not just registers and uses it, but also it's valuable enough that they even give you money for it. That's also important part. Then only your journey actually just begins, because you still need to build the rest of the thing, to expand it, to test new ideas, to keep your product growing. And of course, you will add much more things to it, like data analytics, sales, marketing. Maybe you need to attract external funding. So all of those things start becoming very important also for your product. So it's like continuous cycle, but it's as I said, it's quite fun. And you can really learn quite a lot of things just by doing. So that's about it. And do you have any questions? Let's see something there's in chat. Someone said there's nice graph. Thank you. Do you have any questions about the content, or maybe in general about software development or things like that? No volunteers? Well, we also discussed a little bit with Dominika that if you don't have questions, there's also a possibility we can do a short sort of like workshop, because I understand here are people who already have some sort of product ideas. Maybe someone is even working on their product. So if you wish, we can do a short pitch of your idea, of your product. We can do a short, maybe feedback session in chat, and I can also pitch my feedback if you want. Would you like to? Would we have any volunteers to do that?
Yeah, guys, we're really encouraged to use this opportunity and just discuss your ideas. So if anyone would like to go.
Okay, we have one question. The question is, I'm doing to... We have also a comment that we weren't prepared well. This is the realities of life. You're not always... If you have a product idea, it's sometimes enough, just to shortly explain it in a couple of minutes. The question from Diana is, I'm going to do a Facebook group as MVP. What do you think, how many participants there should be in order to correctly test hypothesis? I would say that you need at least one person, but that one person should do the full cycle. So even if you create a Facebook group, there's probably much larger flow that you probably imagine, because someone just joining group and not participating actively is probably not a good candidate. But if you have at least one or two people who are actually in the group, who are going through the I don't know what you will do in the group, but probably either it's a promotion or a product sale or some organizing some stuff. If you create some inputs, you create like a message or something, and just even enough if one person responds or two people respond and then do something to that and follow up or do their own activities. If you have some sort of business case, so again, you should bring to that Facebook group something that the people should be paying for. So if you get at least one person who's willing to pay actual money, it's basically enough. So you just test it as many users as you have. If you have 0 users, or if you start getting 2, 3, 5 people who say that, hey, this is some nonsense or it's not working, again, it's good indicator that something is wrong. So you should just take that feedback. How many users you need to attract? It's up to you. It's as I said, if you're just testing stuff, then it's even the small amount is okay. If you have already some business case, so you want to do some selling, some promotion, something, you should have numbers. Let's say, like, I don't know what you're exactly doing. Maybe you could provide more details about your idea. But for example, if you're doing some group activity or something, then you probably need at least a minimum amount to form a group. So let's say like maybe it's a Groupon or something where you need like 10, 20 users to just test the business idea effectively. So again, you should have like a minimum number in mind and just do that, unless your idea is somehow again connected to scaling already. But I would say you should try to formulate like a minimum feature or at least one idea to test it out on the actual users. What if people say that they like your product just to be polite? I would say the question probably is how you ask, because if these people are your acquaintances and you feel that they're just polite, well, you probably need to try and go into more public waters and test it to not to actual strangers. And if people are just trying to be as you say, polite and dismiss your attempts, then I would suggest you should change your approach somewhere. because it's also the question, how do you know that they're just saying that about polite? Because you should try to do like a questionnaire or some proper feedback session. And the proper feedback session, again, it depends on the product, but that's why I mentioned in presentation things like using modern tools to actually make a product demo to give the users themselves to try it. Because if you just have an idea and explain it to someone, then it's very easy for people to just say, yeah, it sounds good and it's fine. But the point is getting from the idea to something actually tangible. So as I said, either creating a website or a demo app or something that can people take into their hands, try it, do something with it, and then you don't need, their opinion. You can, that's the point behind, for example, Figma and creating a demo of the app, because you don't, you don't explain anything. You just load the app, give a person a phone, and just, shut up and just see what they do. Because that's actually how our design team is doing usability testing. They're creating a demo, inviting people who are interested, showing them, just giving them product, and they're not telling anything about it. They're not explaining the idea, nothing, just, okay, here you go, this is a product demo. What is naturally for you, what buttons you type, do you understand what is on the screen? Do you understand what you need to do? So it's also how you test the products, and you just watch from the side, and then after the session you ask the feedback, what was good, what was bad. And you might be very, very surprised, because working on your own product, there's a lot of things that it might be very, you might think that it's very straightforward and very clear, and usually your end users are going to be like totally lost in your first iterations of the product. So the idea is get from idea stage to MVP, to something tangible that you can show someone as fast as possible. So this is where the real value is. Okay, do we have anyone else? Any inputs? So Dominika, should we do something else, or is it?
I guess if everything's clear to the participants, we can wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much for participating in our event. We have gratitude expressed by our participants as well.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Yeah, and to participants, see you in our next events. So take care. Bye-bye, guys.
Goodbye.